Let's call the August 10th Planning Commission meeting order. And first item of business is agenda changes, and I have none. Anybody else have agenda changes? No? Okay. Next item of business, public comments for non-agenda items. I assume everybody in the audience is here for agenda item number 3. Okay, so great. We're on to number 3, LaPlatte River Water Quality Summary. So we have Krista Hoffsis, I hope I pronounced that correctly, Marty Illick, and Andrea Marty.
I'm just an audience.
You're just an audience, okay.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having us, you guys. I want to
Oh,
introduce.
and wait, before you go, Marty, Dawn, do you know how to spell their last names? I bet you don't.
I copied.
Oh, you copied from the agenda. You're smarter than I am.
SIS.
That's correct, yeah.
And ILLICK.
Yeah.
And you know Andrea, of course. So okay. Sorry, Marty.
So just to explain, I'm leaving the executive directorship of LCA, and Krista's taking over, and she's going to be our program coordinator now. So thanks for coming, Krista. Just wanted you to meet her. And I want to just say that Andrea's been very busy at this with water sampling for numbers of years. Krista will go into how the Hinesburg folks have helped out with our water sampling since 2004. And I'm really thrilled at this point in time because over the years we've gotten to be a little more strategic, if you will, on how to do this. And we're working really closely with the state, and as you know, Act 64 is here and everybody's more hyper tuned in to the issue. And so it's actually helped a lot in terms of our thinking to get a little more intelligent about how to do this and how to have it have utility in the towns. So that's why we're coming around to the towns and showing what we've got, and we're hoping you'll have some input.
Awesome. Do you have the digital version of these?
I do. What would you like to
Could
be?
you pop up the most,
A map?
the biggest one? Yeah, the
Big
map.
one-
The one showing all the towns. Perfect.
Should we
Okay.
turn the lights down a tad?
Will it work, Shawnees, if we,
Oh, really?
if we
Okay.
kill the lights?
It should be okay.
Go ahead,
It's
Andrea.
okay?
Yeah, see what happens.
Does that work, everyone? Yeah?
Jeff, feel free to,
Oh, there's
take a
a
seat
seat
at the
there.
table if you like.
Sorry. You beat me.
Okay.
I do.
I'll go ahead and begin. So the Lewis Creek Association kind of started a branch off of it called the South Chittenden River Watch. And the South Chittenden River Watch has been doing water quality sampling on the LaPlatte River, which captures the entire watershed since 2004. So there's been basically random sampling going on from 2004 to 2012, and then starting 2013, we focused on high flow events. So there's about 17 volunteers that have been collecting this water quality data over the years. 4 of them are native to Hinesburg. And all of these results actually go through a DEC lab for processing. So we're really lucky to have that, and that definitely helps with the quality of the results. And then those get analyzed. And so basically we've generated this scorecard map that we're hoping is going to be a good tool for people to use to understand what's going on in the watershed and to help inform decisions down the road. So 20 reports have been generated by the South Chittenden River Watch since they started doing water quality in 2004. And those reports have been used to generate basically projects, suggestions of projects that we can take on to improve water quality in the LaPlatte River and ultimately Lake Champlain. Cool. Okay, so I think I'm going to dive into the map now. I'll explain it a little bit, and then what we're looking for today is feedback from you all on how to make the map the most user-friendly, so we can actually use it as a valuable tool moving forward.
Can I say one thing about the town of Hinesburg, just so give you some context when you are thinking about your own town. Yeah, so
That's
this,
us.
yeah, that's you. Come on up, Krista. But this spot right here is just the one station in Hinesburg, and over the years, we've learned that the phosphorus and sediment coming out of Hinesburg and going downstream is, it's a little bit of a hot spot. And you can see in the water summaries that the phosphorus goes from Hinesburg, around where the wastewater treatment plant is, down to Shelburne, and it trends up. So by the time it gets down to Shelburne, it's hot. So just give you that perspective of where you are in the watershed. You're up higher, but you do have, as Krista will show you, those colorful things around the blue lines mean instability, and that's erosion, and that's sediment, and that's pouring in the stream, and it's really about that. So that's all about development and actually historic dredging and that sort of stuff. But nowadays, we're noticing that it has a correlation to development, incremental development. So that's why I think the Planning Commission really wants to key in here.
I also want to we started out with way more water quality sampling points in 2004. And we were getting pretty consistent results on those. So that's why it has narrowed down to just this one. I mean, we used to sample at Patrick Brook, number of places, and other places along the
All right, so to clarify on that one, Andrea,
Yeah.
From 2004 until, say, 2011-ish, LaPlatte was a focus study. And that means we didn't know anything about the chemistry of the stream, so we spent almost 10 years getting baseline data. So we have a really good history of data that shows the actual conditions of the system. And now, as you can see here, the LaPlatte River has few, so we're doing trend monitoring now at what we call sentinel stations. And you can see where there's a lot of boxes up and down there, north and south. That's the McCabe's Brook emptying out into Shelburne Bay. That goes through Shelburne and Hinesburg. We won't focus on that, but that's why there's so many stations there, because it's a focused watershed where we're really trying to understand the system still in the McCabe's. It's a very complicated system. Maybe Krista can show us, why those boxes are the colors they are, that losing stream section. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So these boxes here are basically the little indicators of what's going on at each sampling station. So each box here is a sampling station going out to the lake. So top left is telling us phosphorus, solids is the top right box, the bottom left box is chloride, and the bottom right box is E. coli. So as you can see here, in Hinesburg, we have one sampling station, and the phosphorus and the E. coli are poor quality. A section here of the LaPlatte River that Marty sort of alluded to, that's something that we're really watching, because we have all of this activity from Hinesburg is going right there. So we're thinking that in the future, this section is kind of in trouble. Right now, it's labeled as moderate for stream stability, but I don't think that it will be that status much longer. So the colors sort of hugging the river here, that's telling us the stream channel stability. So in Hinesburg, there is a lot of poor stability. And what we found from analyzing the results of all this water quality data is that the stream channel stability is directly correlated with phosphorus. Okay, cool. So now we're zooming into Hinesburg. Actually, would you mind, Alex, going to the map that's already zoomed in of Hinesburg, because it has a little bit more information?
The only
Yeah.
other map I
That's
have
probably it.
is that one.
Perfect.
That's the one you
That's
mean,
it.
yeah?
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. So now we're just in Hinesburg. Here's the sampling station again. And all of these circles here are culverts. So that's telling us the status of the culvert, both the geomorphic compatibility of the culvert and the ability for aquatic organism passage. Any more trends you want to point out, Marty, before we start?
Well,
getting
on the
some-
culverts, I mean, Alex knows this data pretty well, I'm sure, because it's in the state database, but now you guys can see it as a planning commission. And the undersized culverts means the fish can't get through. I mean, that's an oversimplistic way of saying that, but basically most of our culverts, 90% of our culverts are undersized, and, so you're not alone. But, we got a lot of money to pour into culverts when appropriate, when a lot of times we only want to do it when it's at the end of a shelf life, when they're in poor condition. But this gives you a heads up that you could be doing some capital planning with your culverts. Who knows? That's good. Go ahead.
So from this map and from the summary reports that I think you all might have a copy of, but you can read later on, there's been a list generated of proposed projects that can be done to basically help with this situation and get those that are labeled as poor quality, whether it be channel stability or whatnot.
Can I add in on that, Krista? The numbers there that Krista pointed to, those are correlating to the list you have there, I think, in front of you. The list, Mylone and McBroom, who prepared this map for us, went through our, 20 reports. There's a list of a bibliography there. There's quite a little laundry list of reports. And no one would ever want to read them from front to back. And so this is a beautiful thing that they went through them and culled them for actual projects, recommended projects. So that's where they are. They're on that list. They're right there for you. And they're now numbered on this map to show you to date what has been put on the to-do list. And these are all projects that can be funded through state grant monies, local budgets, et cetera. I mean, this is what LCA does, is goes out to try to hit these projects and get them done. The rain garden was one of them. What was another one that you noted, Krista, that is being, the CVU project, we're working at CVU now. Was there another one that you noted?
Well, the Shelburne Falls Road culvert a few years ago had been identified, and it was about to be replaced. And we were able to make the recommendation that it needed to be replaced to meet all of the state standards, which included the aquatic organism passage. So the size was increased, but there was some modifications done so that the bottom of the culvert would be more suitable for.
Right, and that's this one, right, Andrea?
Yeah, I don't know, I can't quite.
Is that
See
the
it.
Shelburne Falls Road?
It's the one, yes,
There's
Shelburne Falls Road,
Yeah. And also,
yeah,
Just past your pipes, yep,
Yep.
just west of it.
yeah.
And on this map, it shows as having good geomorphic compatibility, which means it was properly sized.
there you go. See, that's one that's been
And
upgraded.
having moderate
Yep.
aquatic organism passage, which means it was done pretty well, but
Yeah.
maybe
So,
not
you know what's
100%
interesting,
for critters.
Alex, is the red underneath it, south of it, is still showing, degraded, but maybe it's changing. That might be something that's gonna improve because of your culvert,
Because when it was too
redoing the culvert.
small, it would have been restricting the water, so when it came out of the culvert, it would
Probably
cause
came out
like a fire
instability.
hose.
It would be incising the
Yeah.
channel.
Why
But-
are there two circles there, one right on Falls Road and one, a yellow one just south of it?
I think because there are two culverts.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think this is the one that's under Shelburne Falls
Falls
Road,
Road.
and this
Falls Road.
this must be another one
On
that
the
is
driveway?
downstream of it on private property, probably.
Do you share this information with the state as well to talk about, like state highways, 116?
Yes.
The state has this information, for sure. What we want to do after we visit the towns is show this to the Regional Planning Commission. And by the way, the other project that I forgot is the Hinesburg Community
Hinesburg.
School. There's work going on down there, which is wonderful.
And before they did the paving project a couple of years ago on 116, I think everybody remembers that, the state has a program that they try to replace the year before they do the paving, the culverts. And there were a number of culverts that had been identified on 116 that could have been replaced. that weren't meeting all of this criteria, but they were still in functional, they weren't rusted enough so that they were, they still are undersized, and the state recognizes that they're undersized, but they're waiting until they, that their shelf life is gone, and then they will use this data to upgrade them.
Is the monitoring station by the sewage treatment plant above or below?
Above. Yeah, see that blue spot there, the lagoon?
Yeah, that's the
So it's sort of
lagoon.
above that, yeah. And actually, just to digress a little bit, this year, 2016, we are doing a low-flow sampling study at the Hinesburg treatment plant with Steve Fisk at DEC, because he wants to take a look at his biology. He's doing his biology study there too, and we're giving him the chemistry, so he'll have a more complete ability to interpret his data.
So the data is not really related to the outflow from the sewage treatment plant. So the high phosphorus is not due to the sewage treatment plant.
So does the water still come over Shelburne Falls Road, even though we have that new culvert?
Yes, further to the west, it still comes over.
It goes over the road?
It doesn't,
Yeah.
I don't think it floods that culvert anymore,
Right.
the one that got replaced. I think that took care of it.
So we're
So,
hoping that this can be used as a tool for towns to start building green infrastructure and doing necessary things to basically,
so your pink area is your current developed area, not pink, pale pink. And Hinesburg obviously has plans to build out a little further there, and I know you have the Mylone and McBroom sort of build-out plan and all the stormwater. I mean, there's a lot. You guys have a ton of information to do very strategic planning, especially with regard to your village. But our data really are showing that even small, incremental, like homes, building out in time, are contributing to the stability of the stream. That data is,
But Marty, how do we know that? From the sampling, it looks like there's, phosphorus and E. coli issues. But as you were mentioning,
Yeah.
the river itself and its tribs have some real instability in their banks because of historic practices, dredging and straightening and that sort of thing. And so, how do we know that the phosphorus load in the LaPlatte, where it's coming from? Is it coming
Right.
from just stream bank erosion,
Yeah.
which has nothing to do necessarily with new development, or is it coming from new development, or is it both? Or
Right.
can we not really tease those apart?
I think it's be awfully difficult to tease those apart. And, Roy, who wrote the report for you, the stormwater report, said what I just said in the report, that's in the report. So I feel that if we want to know and really tease that out as much as we possibly can before you could create some policy and have justification to create policy and strategies, et cetera, you'd probably want to talk with the technical folks, but they've stated it in their stormwater study for you, and that's what we're spouting off at this point. So
I'm just wondering,
Yeah.
given always limited resources to
Yeah.
actually affect positive change,
yes,
where do we get the most bang for our buck? Do
Right.
we have been working on tighter stormwater regulations for new development.
Right.
Those are in the regs. We have been working on some cleanup projects like the rain gardens near
Right.
the community school at Silver Street. I wonder
Right.
if more attention is really needed in tightening up stormwater runoff from new development, or really we should be spending our money on in-stream bank stabilization or some such thing, to the extent that even happens anymore.
the in-stream bank stabilization, with Mike Klein from Rivers Program to be talking about that, certainly there's a lot of red out there. And you can see the lines, there's no meanders in them like over in the wetland there.
Right.
So you see how straightened that system is in your village. So, whether or not there's floodplain access, even with your channelized stream,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? Like, if you have really good floodplain access, you're slowing the flow and you're letting phosphorus deposit in your floodplains, that can do it. And I feel like it's probably in that report and I'm not remembering
And
it.
well, one of the things that does come in that report is that it's not just what's happening in the village, it's the upstream, the volume of water. So I think the stormwater regulations are going to do a lot to at least recognize that it is that incremental development that's happening, so that the all of the other streams coming down, especially like Patrick Brook along Richmond Road, development there is the volume of water that's entering the system also contributes to the stream instability. So that's one of the things that I think the report does highlight is we're seeing the effects down in the valley, but sometimes the causes are further upstream.
And for like Beecher Hill up at the dump, that is
Number 15, is that?
What's
Yes.
that? Yeah, I mean, that project we are really wanting to do, and we've been chatting with Trevor and Mike and Renee about that. We're actually waiting to hear back from them because we actually do have funders that want to contribute to that, but I know it's an extremely big project and undertaking for the town because it involves a huge upgrade to the garage, et cetera, et cetera. But if we could get through to you as a town and get a commitment to that project, then we could secure a good chunk of funding for that, but that's not going to be forever. That's a time-sensitive
So it's a new
project.
stormwater system associated with the town garage, building a new town garage and getting the existing garage off of the banks of the brook there.
Right.
And, trying to deal with the sediment that comes from
That would be
the
big.
gravel pit and the sediment and a lot of excess water that comes off of the drop-off center, the whole paved drop-off center.
So that's another headwater type project, but down in the village area, I believe your green infrastructure, landscape, wetlands or whatever they are that Roy and Jessica had put onto your maps there, those, you can see that the village is a little bit on the verge of, having an impairment status, even at this development, degree of development. And so to use your local, this is my own personal perspective on this, and I'm not a technical person, but if you really take advantage of your green areas, you will avoid having to have big, built, expensive concrete things that Shelburne is in the middle of trying to figure out how to afford. So that's where I feel Hinesburg's got opportunity to help defray, help but not increase taxes by building out in areas that would be perfect for stormwater retention and that kind of thing.
So when you say that, Marty, you're talking about, for example, at the school, there at the intersection of Silver Street and
Thanks, Alex.
116. Are you talking about that kind of mitigation located in other places along
Yeah.
the path of the
Yeah.
LaPlatte?
And that's mapped for you. That's in that stormwater report that Mylon and McBroom did for you.
Where are some of those locations?
Yeah, they've mapped them.
Okay.
And all the hydrology, it's all in there. It's, it's like, not your Friday night reading. But Alex, you know it really well. Alex is like the bank of information. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, you got a lot of info.
Unfortunately, I'm not the real bank, which is
Oh.
the issue with a lot of these projects is where to find the funds to make them happen. The projects like the one at the top of Silver Street where, thanks to your
Well,
organization,
yeah,
possibly,
Well, there is
but-
funds, part of it is getting the landowners willing to participate.
Right.
But also for village master planning, I feel like that report has a lot of content in it for you to like grab and put into a master plan for the village, so, you know, you can save and retain those perfect areas for green, and that would be a tax, you know, benefit to the
Yeah.
taxpayer. And I believe everybody, you know, because as opposed to, maybe you want to do this, and I'm coming in from left field, that you want to have that much build out, and therefore you would automatically have more hard infrastructure that the downtown would depend upon, you know.
So you're suggesting that at the drop-off center, the old dump, number 15, there could be money available,
Yes,
not for rebuilding the town garage, but
right.
working on
right,
the stream there,
yes. Improve
bank
the
erosion,
hydrology.
all of that.
Keep it intact.
I would expect that that would want to be coordinated with what the town may choose to do with the town garage and how that
That's exactly
landscape
right.
plan.
That's
So
what-
those two have to be
It
put
was done.
together.
Let me, yeah,
Yeah.
that's okay. And Jessica did sit with the architect and the town staffers, and they came up with what it would be. It's on paper. And the select board just has to review it and say, yes, this is preliminarily, this is where we want to go. And so that we can actually then secure that commitment.
That part
that's
of
being
the
offered
funding to
us.
do that overall
Yes, and it's
project.
actually Nature Conservancy, and they've got some funding, and they went through all of we have like 14 projects, you know, stormwater type projects. It's called Ahead of the Storm. That was one of two that they selected, that they would raise their hand and say, we will put money to this if you guys say yes. But it's a very sensitive topic because it involves so much of a bond type of situation with the town, but
Right,
and it would make you
for the
promise to
garage.
do that, but if you committed to like doing that project, we could probably get it secured, just FYI. And
So is it
Alex-
clear also then, you're saying, Marty, that other locations, say as we meander through
Yeah,
the sort of more intense
Yes.
portion of the village, there are other
Yes.
locations that this report really sort of
Yes.
says, okay,
Yes.
here's where you need to do something,
Could be
and here's what you
beautiful.
could do.
yeah, a beautiful green, you know, infiltration location,
Mhm.
naturally, type of thing, so the cost would be lower, type of thing. And that's all in the report.
Okay.
So we could find something under number 9 and number 10, which is right there right
Yes.
here in the village, in the report, talking
Yes.
about how we might deal with that.
Yes, and Alex, can you go to the, say, like, the implementation list? Just to show it, so, see, number 1, it's just a listing, it's really not a prioritization. We shouldn't have put that word priority at the top, but if you can go to the headings at the top, just to show what that list is, you guys probably have it in your computers. So it shows you the stream segment, that's the watershed, then the stressor, and then the project, and then on the right is the report. And so then if you went to the bibliography, this thing right here, it's a one-pager. It shows the actual name of the report, and it's annotated. It says a little sentence about what's in it.
Okay.
And ignore priority.
Yeah, ignore
That's
priority,
just
they
1,
all
2,
need
3,
to be
4,
done.
5.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's not, I don't like to prioritize. The state is always telling us to prioritize, but when in fact you're trying to do something, you really have to take advantage of opportunities when they're right in front of you. So we feel like they all need to be done, and we feel like every property should have decent practices on it. If everybody did a little bit, it would really help a lot for, like, the folks that are downstream. So, you wanna go back to the map? Do you have any comments or reactions to looking at, can you zoom out a little bit? Yeah, thanks. So, you know, I don't know, did you mention, I forgot if you mentioned this, Krista, I think I did a teeny bit, but this is a trend monitoring sampling plan design. And so that's why there's few stations throughout this system. Now, it could be that if you scrutinize this a little bit more, you might say, gee, I wish there was one at the bottom of Mud Hollow Brook, or, you know what I mean? Like, you could scrutinize this a little bit more and say, if you're doing trend monitoring, we want to monitor trends in Hinesburg over time, and you wish there was something downstream of the sewage treatment, or, you know, something like this. This would be good for us to know, and we could probably try to, you know, incorporate that if it made sense to everybody. So every year we apply to do this from DEC, and they give us the green light, and, because they have limited lab space to do analysis.
But Marty, if it's a trend, then I'm confused, because it looks like it, according to the text, it's comparing sampling conducted from 2004 to 2015, comparing some average of that or some amalgamation of that
Median. And I
to
should-
the Vermont water quality standards. Whereas if it's really a trend, shouldn't we be seeing a chart that shows phosphorus
How
over
it
time?
changes.
Or
Yeah.
I mean, how would we know that it's getting any better or getting any worse if
Well,
we
that's
just
what the
see?
narrative is.
Okay.
So this is a picture of, in this case, to this year in 2015-16, these are the trend, what we call sentinel stations.
In this report,
In the
it
map,
talks
the
about
map.
the trends,
That report right there tells you the trend.
about the trends.
And what we're saying in that little two-pager is, did it go up or down
Right,
from
okay.
the last year, not from like the past 15? So it's just a simple,
Recent
did we go
history.
up or down? And we're not trying to put that in this map because it would get too complicated. So, you know, again, these are good comments that we're getting from you right now. We've gone through that ourselves in terms of how to display, you know, what's gonna be too complicated, but one thing that we're gonna show this to Shelburne tomorrow night, and one thing that people commented on is they wanted to be able to see the sub-shed or the catchment area that that box represents. Okay. So that-
do you mean by
that's actually what this picture is right here. These dark colors, the gray shades, are different catchment areas for each station. So what we're gonna have people do on Shelburne Day is find their little pink dot, that's where they live, and then they're gonna be able to go to the sampling station that pink dot is in that catchment area and see the quality of water in their little subshed. If that makes sense. So that's the idea of
the
this map.
station down at the bottom, Marty, is the one at our sewage treatment plant, is that right? That one
No.
right there where your
No,
thumb
this
is?
No,
is,
that's
this is,
not in
this is
Hinesburg.
Shelburne.
That's all
right here.
Shelburne.
Oh, that's all
And so
Shelburne.
you're
So you have
We're off.
it's about right here.
Do you have similar maps for
No, we just
Hinesburg?
did this for Shelburne because we talked about it with a little committee and we came up with this sort of creative idea. So I brought it with me tonight just to give you a little A and a B thing.
You have a plan to do one for Hinesburg?
If you're desiring it, we want to start.
Well, the catchment area seems to be relevant in
It
terms
does,
of
it does. I thought it
what's
was a neat
causing
idea.
the conditions
Yeah.
at our
Yeah.
sewage treatment
Yeah, that would be
plant.
very, very helpful.
Yeah,
But with
already
only one
have-
monitor point, where it all
but
comes
it's
together.
Right,
that
but
with
where's
one
the
monitoring
catchment
point, it's
area?
everything upstream of that, so it's not helpful. It's
Yeah.
everything upstream.
Yeah.
I mean, the catchment area is
So whether
Everything.
whether you're on the LaPlatte
Upstream.
or Patrick Brook,
It would show you everything upstream
yeah.
represents that box and where the line is that goes to the downstream catchment area.
So what's causing our riverbanks to erode? Is it
Well,
because
Yeah,
the rivers aren't as deep as they used to be?
well,
I
as
mean,
Alex
in the
pointed
past,
out,
they used
yeah.
to go in and clean them
Yeah,
out. and
exactly.
Now that's a no-no.
Right, and that's why it's the way it is right now. So right now, the streams don't have enough length to slow the flow, so it's straightened and it goes faster, so they've lost.
So was that a bad practice
Yeah,
to go in
that's
and
a
clean
bad
them out?
practice. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It might have been good for the short term, but it was bad for the lake. That's what the lake is experiencing right now, is all that straightened stream and fast water zooming out there and laying the dirt right down the lake, right?
But ultimately, what needs to happen is for those streams to reshape
So
themselves.
that's what they're
And
doing
until
right
they
now.
do that, 20 years from now,
Yes.
100 years from now,
Yes.
we're going to continue to see stream bank
Yes.
erosion.
And Mike Klein at the Rivers Program will say to us quickly, it's gonna get worse before it gets better, because of all of the straightening we've done for 200 years.
The straightening
In order to get
and the
to be-
digging them out deeper
Yes.
means that they didn't have access to the floodplain.
Right.
So it's the access to the floodplain is when there's the most water there, and if it can come up and over the banks.
That's what
And the
we want.
straightening and the dredging of keeping it deeper was creating these more channels. So what's happening in some places is that it's actually, it's coming up higher. So the river is, in some places, getting opportunities to get access to the floodplain and the wetlands.
So
And
that's
new
why we're seeing more
channels-
flooding?
And, yeah, and new
Plus we
channels.
have
will
part of it.
serve-
Plus, there's more
There's a
rain.
lot more water coming
There's
in.
a lot
more water coming up
In the
from-
How's it
sky.
been this year?
No.
Is it, when you look
No,
at the
right.
river in the areas in, through Hinesburg, through the village area,
Mhm.
and you've got these sections that are straightened,
Yep,
and they're all marked with, along the edge of them as being red.
Right.
Which really is the river reestablishing a meandering passage.
Yes,
So actually, the red in long-term effect is a good thing.
exactly.
well,
It-
that's a
it's
kind of
going
a
to-
funny way to interpret it. I mean, currently today, it's red because it's unstable, and that meander wants to be, this section right here, if it were left to its own devices, you know, this straight thing, it would look more like this right
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
So, you know,
So
right now
long-term, the repositioning in.
is what we want,
Yes.
yes. So it's increasing its length by getting more like this. So the geometry needs to change and get back to a more stable, so it's an evolutionary process.
And that's why over the last 15 years, we've modified our regulations
Yeah,
to require more room around the river so that we don't build and we allow the river
To
to
have a conflict.
reestablish
right.
itself.
Because Hinesburg's one of the few towns that has adopted the FEH, the fluvial erosion. That is what that shape is. It's the minimum shape that a river needs
Mhm.
to stay in good shape.
Yeah.
And with the new weather, it's gonna be bigger. It's gonna need to be bigger, so we're in this sort of funny time right now. Where the FEH line that was delineated back in '07 by Lisa Godfrey in this town, that will probably need to be updated sometime.
So is it informational in any way? I mean, if you look at those two monitoring stations, one in Hinesburg, just upstream of the sewage treatment
Right.
plant, then one in Charlotte, where basically, I'm not saying the values are the same, I imagine they might be different, but the condition's the same,
Yeah,
even though one is downstream of our sewage treatment
Yes.
plant and the other is not.
yes, and I feel like those green boxes are about to become yellow or red.
Okay?
And that's, you see that in the narrative, the little summary reports,
Okay.
where I feel like I almost want to go back and look at the data with MMI, but I'm sure it's right. But yeah, I think those green boxes are about to become
Mm-hmm.
yellow or red.
Okay.
Unless some nice, awesome, big, new upslope from the stream changes and slows that, you know, degradation down. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, you see it further on up downstream in Shelburne.
Yeah, if you look at the P graph on your summary report, I think it's on the first page. It goes like Hinesburg, Charlotte,
Mhm.
you know, and Shelburne is like way up high. And Shelburne, as you know, is full of development right by Shelburne Bay. And
Yeah.
they've got a lot to work on.
So you asking us, hey, are these maps, you know, I can't say I've taken in all the information
No,
you've got
right.
here, but, I mean, this takes some work, I'd say.
Right.
I'm sort of a map guy, you know?
Yeah.
I like maps
Yeah.
and understand them for the
Right.
most part.
Right.
And this is not sort of like a quick
No, it's not.
take-in, you know?
Right, right.
And probably as a planning commission,
Yeah,
uh, we need it put to us fairly simply. I'd suspect that's not insulting the intelligence of anyone here,
No,
but,
no, there's always.
you know, it's just,
Ralph, were you saying these maps are maybe a bit too complicated? Hard to draw a message out of?
well, yeah, it'd be nice if someone just said, hey, here's the deal. Here's the deal. Here's what you gotta do, you know? And some of it maybe just reinforces what, you know, are we looking at, say, for example, increasing the riverside setbacks that we've established? You know, I don't know off the tip of my tongue know exactly what that is, say along the LaPlatte or some of the primary river bodies that move through town. Or is it, yeah, you know, I mean, we've also just, in terms of stormwater, we just, there was a little bit of a tussle, but we reduced the size of developable area insofar as just, you know, before you're required to have a stormwater management plan.
To what was that,
I mean,
10,000?
I think it's now 10,000 square feet.
Yeah.
It's around a quarter acre, just on that.
Quarter acre.
Yeah,
So you're always sitting there saying, well, okay, is this sufficient, what we're doing right now? I mean, it also sounds like there's a lot of remedial work that you're talking about in certain key locations.
Yeah.
And I guess we gotta just read that document you were talking about, but.
yeah, I think just let it settle for a while and we can talk about it again and, you know, maybe bring in some technical folks to help think about it a little bit more. It's a conversation that should go on for a little bit before you come to any real conclusions.
Well, like, one of the things we're talking about is basically, we've referred to it as the, I guess it's called the official map.
Yeah.
The official map, for the most part,
Right.
addresses, you know, required town infrastructure.
That's an interesting thought.
Patterns. I mean, is that something where,
Yeah.
you know, some of this remedial work needs to find its way into that document in some fashion so that
Right.
when we have development, am I talking crazy or?
Well, it's just ideas.
Yeah, I think we have to look and see how that fits into the definition of the official map, which was kind of a tool that state statute gave us to project forward for, you know, the purchase of land, you know, if we had infrastructure
Oh,
needs.
interesting.
In by, you know, by
Yeah.
retrofit, you know,
Yeah,
you know, this is, in a lot of cases, right, we've seen some things on private roads, et cetera, that the town isn't ever gonna purchase, but we somehow need a tool to, you know, drive, right, the replacement of culverts, the extra infrastructure that's needed, you know, for things that are already developed and not gonna come in for additional permits in the future. You know, some way to spur that on.
well, the map that, in that stormwater study, Alex, that shows the green infrastructure locations, the MMI map.
Yep.
That would be green infrastructure versus built. That could, if the town sees it as an asset for public values and public asset, then I could see that becoming on an official map potentially, because it would be benefiting the whole town to be showing that and choosing to reserve that for your green infrastructure, whatever.
Which isn't necessarily that it has to be redesigned and planted. It means just
Yeah.
kind of keeping those pieces of land and allowing them to keep them intact,
Yeah.
non-developed.
And that could be, you know, your conservation fund or whatever.
We should look at that when
Yeah.
we get through the town plan and get to the village rezoning, because that map that Marty keeps referencing,
Yeah.
which is none of the maps you're seeing tonight, it's a different
Yeah.
map. It's not about existing culverts, it's about
Hydrology.
these green areas that
Yeah.
could have green infrastructure added to them or
How's
improved.
a big body of work.
That's largely just for the village area. So
Right, but-
it'll play into your discussion about tweaking and revising the village growth area zoning, I think.
I mean, that's good, because I think we have a recognized issue with the village area, and that we have stormwater issues that can almost never be addressed without some global plan because of the small lot sizes and.
Right. Yeah, not only do we need to think about keeping those places intact, as Marty and Andrew are saying, but we need to, I think, do some capital planning for, how we're gonna make some of those improvements that no one else but the municipality is going to do because of all the historic development patterns and established development.
Right, and that thing, I mean, those types of things may well fit into an official map, because in order to, in order to reserve that resource, to get it, we may need to put it on an official map to drive the process, should that land ever come up for sale.
Right.
One, and if we had it in a capital budget, as you remember from.
As I remember, yes, we need
very
that.
well from the Act 250 review on Hannaford, that if it's in the capital budget as well, then we have a greater leg to stand on.
Right.
We
And
learned
also
the hard way.
river corridor itself, Alex, like you keep pointing to the fact that it's had this straightening history to it. And, I mean, I don't know enough about your landscape like you do, but I would imagine we could look more closely at that landscape to see where you could maybe reserve some of that land a wider. If you're gonna build out, you're gonna have more impervious and you're gonna be more of a threat to the channel stability. So I would imagine that you'd wanna have something to do with that relationship, like whether 10,000 square feet, that's a big building. Even though it's a huge.
Well, it's not just the building, it's not just the building,
The land area.
it's the added impervious surface, so
Yeah, that's a lot of impervious surface.
it's about the size of the parking lot back here.
Yeah, that's way bigger than a house, is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's like.
Yeah, I mean,
it's-
we looked at it,
Yeah.
and we thought about the house, the driveway, the patios, and
Yeah.
the driveway ends up being a fairly big, portion of it, especially for, not necessarily in the village, but it's a town-wide reg, right? So when you're talking a more rural, build, right? Your driveway is 100, 150, maybe more. Some of these driveways are a quarter mile. That quickly brings you, to that 10,000
Yeah.
or over 10,000.
I really focus on your village area, because you have a build-out plan for it, and, just the incremental piece is the tricky one.
So, Marty, you're saying that a lot of what we're measuring at the one station in Hinesburg, upstream of the sewage treatment plant, those conditions are being created upstream of that location. So
Yeah.
we've got, your Hinesburg map shows 3 main feeders that come down to that measuring point. Right? Right. One goes up to Lake Iroquois in the lower pond. One goes around past the old dump, and the third one goes way down south into an area actually that is all part of a conservation project that the Land Trust did.
Yep.
And you're saying that all 3 of those branches are bringing down material to cause us to measure what we measure at the
Yeah.
town sewage
Yeah.
treatment plant. We don't have any information that says one particular branch or another is contributing more to that, and we would be able to affect the conditions at the sewage treatment plant if we concentrated efforts there. For example, the branch that goes through the village and up toward Lake Iroquois, as opposed to the one that comes all the way down into the southern end of town. Does any of your information in the written reports that say this is more of a contribution to water quality?
I would have to go look, John.
But they wouldn't unless there were samples down there,
You'd
right?
have
And
to
you
have
said
those
the
monitoring
sampling,
stations.
I mean, you
the
could do some
sampling was
observational.
consolidated at a certain year.
But you could go and observe and look, but, acre per acre, I mean, they're all needing to be addressed. If they're in that red zone, that's like unstable. They all need to be addressed.
Well, for example, I don't know all of these, but the one
Yeah.
that's the long trail that comes all the way down south, the horizontal line, the east-west line, that's relatively flat in there. And that has been straightened out because it was farmed.
Yeah.
But the branch that turns and runs north then, or kind of at a diagonal,
Yeah.
there's some topography there
Yeah.
that's drops sharply into
Yeah.
into the stream bed
Yeah.
and was never farmed.
Yeah.
It might have been cleared at
Well,
one time.
I mean, there are so many factors, right? I mean, there's rise over run, there's proximity of development to the bank, right? There's the type of vegetation between development and the bank. You know,
That's
there's-
very
there's
unbuilt
density.
up, still
Um,
used as farming in the flat area.
What's interesting, and
Yeah.
one thing that's not, I don't know if you've
Yeah.
ever done it, was if you
Yeah.
look at the areas, Beecher Hill and Partridge Hill, the sections where the river is the steepest, topographically, overlaying a topographical map on here,
Right.
which getting
Yeah.
into
Sure.
where we had dealt with
Slopes.
slopes,
Yeah,
slopes and development on
Sure.
slopes and what's
Yeah.
allowable, and
sure.
you find that the steeper the hill, the rockier the
Yeah,
soil. The
right.
rockier the soil, the less erosion there is, the more stable
Yeah.
the bank is.
Yeah.
In the flat floodplain areas are more susceptible. One, they were farmed, and two, they were straightened, and now they're trying to right
And soil
themselves.
type.
Well, we have that's
soil
the
type.
unique thing about
Yeah,
Hinesburg, is that we've got all the gravel up in the hills, and then it comes down to the clay.
Mm.
And in fact, the clay is.
that's what moves.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
but there's a tremendous amount of sediment coming down off of Beecher Hill, that's
Mm.
the gravelly soil from up there.
Mm.
It's coming down.
What happens on the hill contributes to velocity and volume.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So,
No, I'm just saying, it's just interesting to look at the riverbank edge.
Yeah,
And just looking at that, not talking about what's coming
Yeah.
down in it, because it's
Yeah.
moving faster.
So are you suggesting that maybe a combination of the soil erosion that's being observed and topography might be an interesting map to
it's-
see those together?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to
decide
try and
where
learn
to-
from that.
Where to do your action.
It's two bits of information to see if there's something in those independent bits of information that you can make a correlation in
that's
between.
causing this.
well, the
it's just-
stream morphology assessments are very detailed. This is just the conclusion,
Mhm.
the categorizing them and ranking them.
Mm.
So when they go do their cross sections and get the soils and all the stuff, the topography, all that stuff is in the report. If you're gonna wanna get into the weeds on that, which is great.
So there is a map that would show
There's a
them.
lot of
So there's
data
a map
in
that
these
shows,
reports.
combines those
Oh, yeah.
pieces of information.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah,
And they're listed in your bibliography.
Grays.
So I think there's some on a positive note. If I'm hearing you right, is those three, if you look at those three sections that are feeding in,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just thinking about where we can affect change. And obviously the one coming from Lower Pond into the village with the development going on, we might be able to see some work get done there. Up by the town garage, there might be some
Something to
opportunities.
do there in that
And then what you're
little
saying down
section.
south, if there's some conservation work going on there that might be something you could do on that third one. The only thing is I'm wondering is the long part between the village going south to
Yeah,
Beecher
it's
Hill
mostly
there.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
through
that
this stretch
section
right
and
here.
that one down.
But a good chunk of this I could see where the regulations would be touched, relatively
What do you
soon.
mean touch?
Meaning there'd be development in the village on the one part, so if we had regulations in place, you could have something be done about it. Where the garage is on the one part, there's funding, there's things that we can talk about there. And then if there's conservation projects going on, there's work that we can see and help guide
Yeah.
versus just, it's red and there's nothing planned to go through there. It's like running through a farmland and, I just see the opportunity for regulations to help alleviate
Yeah.
some of this so it can have the time it needs to heal, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
It comes from Lower Pond.
Some organisms can't get through it.
I mean, your little village is, your little village area is right at the toe of the slope.
Yeah.
And then you have a lot of wetland, basically,
This
so
is-
you're in a tricky spot.
This
And
corresponds to
so,
the
Well, down
you know,
here it's like
anywhere you
Right.
can
This
retain
corresponds to the demarcation
all the way up
wetlandy
through
type
around the river.
sink
I
spots
always thought this was
and
Pepper's.
this
to
corresponds
filter water,
So
that's
it's
sort of
There,
the
so
strategy.
This is
Here's one area,
Comes to
the
mind.
square part says.
Right.
Goes all the way up
How
to
much
the
could you
Hoffsis
really
airport.
do in this,
It's big
where the
enough.
LaPlatte,
It's on the
sort of
edge.
between the village and down south, this red area here?
That's
It
the
looks like
square
it's all
portion. The
through
red portion
wetlands.
says critters can get through it.
I wouldn't
and
think a
not
lot of
get
that would be
through it.
touched. Where it is today, right?
Where are you pointing?
Yeah, that's called.
Through that area,
Okay.
right there, so
yeah,
it's all
yeah,
wetlands.
yeah, yeah.
Care of itself kind of in there.
So really, all the parts, there's potential of something we could latch onto and work, you know, whether it's maintaining those wetlands or doing the conservation or looking at the garage or regulations in the village that could help move
Well,
this
supporting
along.
doing some stuff at the school,
Yeah,
at
so
the
it's
school
not-
parking lots and just being aware,
Yeah,
you know, of when developments are proposed in the village, you know, kind of making that infrastructure need to really focus on the infiltration aspects of it. And as opposed to, you know,
just,
allowing more pipes and.
Yep.
And
and
Alex, you know,
culverts.
to your point, I feel like we need to look more closely at the river stability versus the development, incremental development
Mhm.
build out and its correlation with phosphorus numbers and turbidity numbers. Because I feel like you need strong justification to make any kind of a policy change or new policy
Well,
or
especially
even
given the policy
strategies.
changes we've already made on the regulatory front, right? So we're already, through our last stormwater regulation update, you know, way more, we're triggering state standards for way more projects. So to even go beyond that, I think, yeah, we'd have to have some real justification to say that there would be bang for your buck there, as
Right.
opposed to saying, well, you could do that, but it's the stream banks that are destabilizing and will for the next 20 years, and that's going to overwhelm anything you do on the development side beyond what you've already done.
Yeah,
When I look at this map,
yeah,
I see red around streams, and I see a stream buffer regulation that wants to be improved, right? So we have stream setbacks of 75 feet on either side, greater in the village, and in the village we have actual buffer requirements, so there's supposed to be certain vegetation regimes management
Yeah.
happening. I look at these red, buffers around those streams, and I say, well, that we would logically want to extend those to those areas outside of the village, because those are unstable areas,
Yeah.
and we want to give the stream room to go.
yeah,
I look at all the culverts and the projects, and I think
Yeah.
those are municipal projects that we should be putting in a capital budget and
yeah,
checking them off over the
Yep.
next 20 years. We're going to do one every other year or something.
yep,
And
Yeah.
and as far as like
Yeah.
new development and making sure that it respects wetland areas and floodplain and all that, I think we should do. I think we've done that. Maybe we haven't done enough, but I feel like Hinesburg is fairly well mapped in terms of floodplain areas and with the new state stormwater regs coming out and our even sort of improved stormwater regs, I kind of feel like we're there. That's what I would recommend we do.
Yeah.
Is, improve the regs to cover these streams that are areas that are unstable, and just start picking off projects that we could actually get funding for and
yeah,
have influence over.
yeah,
I would agree with you, Alex. There's one thing, though, that I would say is that what we have understood is that the state wetlands map, which is what we tend to rely on,
oh, yeah,
we could improve and make
Mm.
sure that at least all the information that's in that old UMass wetland study
Mm-hmm.
gets incorporated into the state maps, so that I mean, as we saw on Japrex, is there's way more wetlands on sites than what is the state map is using. And if they continue to just rely on the state maps and that consultants do, then we are losing the opportunity to really protect more that maybe ought to be.
Mhm.
Because it only gets flagged when citizens come to the meetings and identify that. So I think we might want to just work with the Conservation Commission maybe and really be sure that we have the wetlands properly mapped.
Is the advisory layer your local maps? I mean, in our town, in Charlotte, we did that, wetland mapping as well. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the advisory layer on the website, A&R map, is our mapping of wetlands. Those polygons are our local. I would think that that advisory layer would pull in yours as well.
Yeah, we do at the local review level, and my understanding from the state is that they look at ours as well in order to flag things.
But that the advisory layer that they have online includes your
That I'm not positive
UMass.
about.
That's would be
Well, it didn't
interesting.
seem to
I
on
think-
Japrogs.
What?
It didn't seem to on Japrogs.
Well,
Okay,
that's
okay.
a different
Maybe we didn't
situation. I mean,
have
there
a
was an
description.
actual delineation done by VHB in Japrags that was just wrong. That
But they
wasn't a-
relied on the state map.
But they looked at the state
They relied on the
maps.
state map. They did not go out in
Oh,
the
they
field.
did not do a field
They never
delineation?
went in the
No.
field,
Oh,
and that's
okay.
what I'm saying, is that if we continue to only rely on what are on the state maps,
Right,
Yeah,
right.
that's a good
and,
point.
and not make sure that there is a field delineation done, and that you then rely on neighbors or whoever coming in. Whereas we do have that old data from the UMass data,
Right, which we use
which,
now.
but I think it would be helpful to maybe make sure that it does get into the state database.
It's really a disservice to the developers because they're looking at the state maps and
Yeah.
it turns out it was wrong at
Yeah.
Japrogs. And they had planned
Right.
based on the state map
Right.
and now they're having to go back.
So the wetland data could be improved.
Yeah, either by incorporation, as
yeah.
Andrea suggested, or since that was done
Sometime
a very
25
long-
years
do
ago.
a
it,
long time
do it
ago,
again.
it might make sense to try to find some funding to do it
That
again.
might be kind of neat to do on a watershed scale, maybe,
Yeah.
like between towns.
Certainly the
And you have
technology is
sources of
improved
money
with
to-
I'm not
water
sure
and all
we
that.
can think about it. The other thing I'm trying to get into, Art, I'm on the Charlotte Planning Commission, and we're creating a water resource map. And we're sticking in the hydric soils, they're the different soil types, not just hydric soils, but the ABCD stuff where you can see where the soils drain well versus not just wetlands versus prime and statewide soils, so, which are limiting in terms of how to use them. But you can really see where you can do stormwater practices, or where you might need to do stormwater, where the soil where the water doesn't drain.
So the hydrology of the soil.
Yeah, the different soil categories, they're A, B, C, D.
Right.
And it shows it, and it looks like it could have some nice utility. We think we got it pretty well completed. Pam Brangan did it at RPC, so it's,
But you actually did that in Charlotte
Yep.
on your own. That wasn't information that you're pulled from state sources.
well, yeah, she pulled the data, she got it.
But
She
she
did
incorporated
take it
the
from
soils
She
map.
just did it the way we wanted to see it, so she actually says there's A soils, there's B soils, and by the way, you have 20% of your town is A.
So to answer
So
the
you
question,
did have to
John,
map it
they
yourself.
didn't, Charlotte didn't go out
You
and
didn't
map their
create the
soil.
data, but you put it together
Correct.
in a way
Yeah.
that showed the
Right.
different soil types.
Yeah.
But we could do that too.
Right.
Yeah.
We wouldn't, all it would need is
You
just
can
a
do it.
little GIS exercise. And
Right.
We could do the same
There's a
thing.
lot of that information. It was all done, I think, in the '60s, actually.
The soil
It's all
conservation.
available.
They did a whole grid of the state.
We just wanted to see it in our town for agricultural reasons and also for stormwater planning reasons.
So we're
Soil-
talking
soil.
about stormwater a lot
Yeah.
here. We could do the same thing in
Absolutely, it's cinchy.
But doesn't, if you did wetland mapping, wouldn't that change
Yeah.
every year? Because
Well-
farmland that's not being used, the swales fill in and then it becomes
It
wetland?
starts to
No.
meander.
Things, wetlands
that fast.
can change
Has to
over
be.
time, but not year to year as much
Yeah.
as,
Maybe
over a
not year to
period
year,
of
but
time.
over.
Sure,
Well,
and that's why I
periods
think
of
it
time.
actually might be a good idea to redo the UMass wetland delineation that Hinesburg did back in the early 90s.
Because when you go develop a piece of property, your engineer goes out and they'll tell you if they don't go by the state maps,
No,
you have to call the state in and they
There's
come out.
defining
and-
factors in soils, vegetation, hydrology, and then they go deeper and they do soil analysis, looking for modeling in the soils. They look for oxygen-deprived layers within 16 to 20 inches of surface. There's a whole
But
list
the
of
state
defining
soil
things.
maps aren't that accurate.
Absolutely not.
You have to physically go out there.
Right.
So why,
The problem is that the only time that really happens is when
Do a
the
project.
state maps show that there's something nearby that might mean there's a wetland, or it's obvious to somebody on the ground. If it's neither of those two, meaning it's an unmapped wetland area and it's not obvious to people, it may get overlooked. And that's one reason to maybe see if we could do another wetland mapping effort to capture those areas, like John said, and provide that as a resource to folks so they know what not to mess around with.
And maybe address the fact that they need to do that. They need to go on the ground to define the wetland areas. I don't know whether our
Right.
regulations actually say you have to do that. No, the regulations, they can use the state delineation and that's enough.
No, our regulations do require wetland delineations, but only if there's some evidence that there are wetlands present, and we use the state maps as the red flag
I
to
see.
start that process. And
Yeah.
that's what I was trying to say. If you
Right.
look, somebody's looking out at a field,
Right,
there are no wetlands indicated on the map,
right,
and they don't see that
Right.
field is a wet meadow and is in
Right.
fact a wetland, then nobody's going to require wetland delineation because nobody realizes it's there.
yeah,
So let's
Or more
say
in
I'm
the woods,
Vermont
too.
Gas and
Yeah.
I'm standing at Chaprog's and looking out where I'm gonna run my pipeline. There's a wetland there, I see that. What do? I go
Yeah.
to the state maps and say, oh, there's what it is.
Not in our, so if that pipeline were subdivision, what happened would not have happened.
Okay.
They would have done an
Because you have
on-the-ground
local
They would have
delineation.
had to go on the ground.
That's what our
and
regulations say now,
that.
yeah.
So we presented this in April to DEC, and they got a big room full of folks. A lot of stormwater guys came in, because it's a scorecard idea, and we're trying to get, and they had a lot of good thoughts. And one of the things that they wanted to see on here was their biology stations, where they have their stations throughout the state that basically tell them if a stream is in high quality shape or not. So they use biology, to determine this. And so we, of course, will put that on there. But one of the things that we got to talking about was, once this gets a little more refined and more like what we want it to be, it could potentially get up on the A&R website. And so then you could put the topo line on and elevation and different things that you might want to see if you're, so it's not just a static thing. Layers, and then we can update it over time electronically versus paper. So that was what came out of that meeting, FYI. So clearly, we want this map to have utility to towns, as I feel like that's the most important thing. And we want towns to think watershed, but we want them to also think within their political bounds and how they impact other towns next door.
Okay. Other questions?
Thank you, guys,
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Thank you.
Sorry to keep you up so late. That hard line.
Yeah, it wasn't so hard, was it?
You're so permissive.
That's him, he's in charge of me.
Okay, all right.
I would have brought my gavel if I was around.
Y'all still use gavels over here?
No, but I have one upstairs in case of emergency.
Okay.
Okay, so let us move on, item number 4, town plan, top 10 priority action items. So 60 minutes. So Alex is timing us. All right, so selection of top 10 action items for priority goals. I know we all had assignments. I've seen a number of us have completed their assignments and sent emails.
Supposed to send them?
Mhm.
That was the trend, so.
Yeah, I was gonna
It all
write to you
happened
and
in
say, well,
15 minutes before the meeting started.
my two in year one, they're all the same, they could be combined. I did combine
Felice
some of them,
Cat.
and then I saw that you wrote, why don't we combine?
F-E-L-I-C-E-C-A-T.
They're talking about the same thing.
So,
No caps.
so do we want to go through these in their ranking order, or do we want to just go from their goal number, or
Let's do ranking, huh?
Okay. Okay, so like 10 was highest score and 1 was the lowest score. I think we already did 3.1.
Yep.
So the next one on the list is 7.1. And apparently didn't get up the right. Oh, there it is. So 7.1 is
Yeah, that had 40.
Russell.
Yeah, I was trying to get on here so I could read my write-up, but basically they were all kind of unique as far as transportation. So in looking through these, I kind of tried to develop a mindset of what were the most important. So, and I think my mind went to, as far as priorities, what's the most important in talking about traffic patterns is discourage or preventing traffic from getting any worse to start with. So, you know, I went to 7.1.4, which is discouraging installation of the traffic light at that 116 Mechanicsville intersection. I then kind of went along to 7.1.1 as number 2 in a priority list for continuing work collaboratively with the state with completion of the plan improvements on Route 116 Seaview Road, that intersection. And as I wrote it up in the email, and I can't get it up because my computer won't go in there. But anyways, the number 3, I kind of merged 7.1.3 and 7.1.5, just because those were. Oh, thank you.
Your email.
Just because those, in my mind, they dealt with bypass, if you will, or alternate routes along 116, and you almost need to know what those are going to be and to be able to design and study those and figure those out before you can move on to the next priority, which is the final design and installation of improvements for the 116 Charlotte Road, because they're going to have an effect. You know, that was kind of my thought. So 4 being the final design installation plan improvements at 116 Charlotte Road. And then number 5 I had with the work with the owners of the mobile station, Obashan Plaza, on relocating their access.
But your number 1 is 7.1.
Well, this is where I want to input from everyone here. I mean, they're all really important things, and kind of when I wrote up on the end about 7.1.6, I don't think any one of these, it's not like I think you have to do this one before you do this one before you do this one. If you have to categorize them, I think you need to break it down in an order and say, you know, I would want to make sure that we don't impede any further the traffic flows that we have. So, 7.1.4.
So I guess I'm unclear about one thing. I know you said 7.1.4. In 7.1.4 definitely has that bent to it, but it's really specific to one thing, right? It's this notion from the Act 250 Commission that we should put a light at Mechanicsville Road.
Yeah.
You know, is your recommendation really more general that we not, you know, that we should not want to do anything on any portion of 116 through the village that might slow people down?
No, I
You know,
think
like
that I
nasty
think what we
things
need
like
to
crosswalks
do
and-
is, like here, what it's talking about is unless it can conclusively demonstrate that such a light will not exacerbate traffic congestion. If it can be proven that it's not going to make it worse, then that would not become the number 1, and then my priorities
So
would
you're
shift.
happy with the specificity?
I think that's actually one of the most functional intersections in the town. It's the most courteous intersection in the town, and I travel that multiple times every day, where you pull up to the light and somebody always stops for you, because I think in the long run they know that if they don't, that you might get a light.
Well.
And I live
They
right up the
figure
street.
if they fix the lights and all that traffic's gonna move faster, and then that's gonna get worse.
I mean, I would frankly think you fix that by making it one way.
Because
You
they're
can
gonna
go
be,
north but not south.
you know, after we stop and go, they're just gonna keep moving.
Except, even with the Charlotte Road intersection over here fixed, the projected queuing length is still back up to Mechanicsville Road. I don't think it's projected to get substantially shorter. We're just not necessarily gonna see queues that back all the way up to, Ballards or, Riggs Road. So I remember reading that the politeness factor might go away once the Charlotte Road intersection is fixed, but I'm not convinced that it'll go away enough to make it, go from decent and polite to terrible and nasty, but could be wrong.
I'm not a design engineer, but I've lived here a long time, and I drive that road all the time, and I've never seen more than 4 cars backed up at that intersection trying to get out, even during busy times. If you made that one way and you diverted all the traffic down and it had to stop at a light and had to wait a turn, the turn is going to get longer because you're not letting one here, one there go through. It's kind of the cul-de-sac theory. They keep moving. If they all go down to the traffic light it's down at the mobile station and they all stop, you're going to have this queuing that's going to happen. It's going to back up, which is going that interval for that release is going to cause more of a delay on the 116 traffic. I don't know. I'm just thinking in my head, that queuing, I've never seen it bad getting out of Mechanicsville Road.
On Mechanicsville
Yep.
Road.
And I'm down there at 5 o'clock, and that's my own take on it. But hey,
So
whatever.
the point of this exercise, I'm sorry that I missed your last meeting. The point of this exercise, is it to prioritize action items within goals that were priority goals? Or is it to select action items within those priority goals that we can add to the sort of top 10 action list?
Well, Joe
What do
said
we
pick-
do?
So,
He said pick the highest priority action within your section.
Okay.
right,
And
so,
audit actions in the section
right.
to see if there's overlap and consolidation.
Right, so we kind of
Mining.
morphed it a little bit. One of the goals was to pick things, the top 10. It was the second round. First you pick the high level, goal, and then you pick the action underneath it. In doing that with the first one, the highest rated one, we realized there was a lot of overlap and we know that we're flooded with actions. All right, so as part of this going through, we decided that along with picking the one that goes in the top 10 list, we try and
Right.
crank down the number.
Combine some or
Yeah.
consolidate. I
Yeah.
gotcha. So which one is the top one? 714, as far, is that your
Well, I mean,
recommendation?
that's-
Russell?
7-1.
In
Oh, yeah,
addressing,
714 is the action.
I don't know, my thought, which is, if to go back to the goal, 7.1, was to improve the efficiency of traffic flow through the village area, particularly vehicle congestion and long queues along 116 during peak hours, while ensuring vehicular, pedestrian, bicycle safety. So, I mean, I kept going back to that, saying, how am I gonna get there? And if I take all these goals, I mean, they're all important. They're all action items.
All the actions.
They're all actions. And I just looked at them in a way that, in a long-term planning way,
Yep.
And I tried to merge the ones that I thought could be merged, which was 7.1.3 and 7.1.5.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with the selection of 714 is the goal. I kind of think a light there is a stupid idea for.
I have
number of reasons.
I have to give some reality to this intersection at Mechanicsville Road. Currently, there is a court case going on relative to Hannaford. And it went before the environmental board. And the judge mandated that a light be placed at the Mechanicsville Road before Hannaford could open. They have to do that.
Mostly because he didn't understand the issue.
Maybe so, but that was the
Yeah.
order that came
Right.
down. So the Hannaford side of things appealed that and said, you can't make us have that light put in. AOT doesn't want to put a light in there. We don't know about the town, but we don't think the town wants the light there. and they
We know about the
legally-
town. The town also does not want a light there. And
Right.
And is appealing the environmental court decision to the Vermont Supreme Court on that basis.
Right, exactly. But currently, the answer that came back from the judge was, no, I'm not taking it back. You have to put that light in before Hannaford can open. Now, I know we're not involved in Hannaford
I don't care
and so
about that
forth.
process.
Right,
Right.
but that's
Right.
going on. I
I-
want you to know that that's happening
I-
out there also.
But,
That's outside of what this commission is gonna be able to do.
well,
I think that if the town gets, if they lose the case, or if it gets pushed to the point where you're forced to do it, I think you're forced to do it. But until then, I think there's some
Right.
sound reasoning
right.
for
I think-
what town
I think-
residents
I
want
think
and what
from
its
a-
effects would be.
From a town perspective, from a traffic study perspective, right, from prior traffic, from 116 scoping perspectives, right, it's never been recognized that a light at that intersection would be a good thing, right? And that's irrespective of any potential development or allowance thereof.
I totally agree with what Joe's saying, what you're saying, Vic. I'm just telling you, outside of this body, there's some other discussion and some legal work that's going on.
I shouldn't be considering that. I'm not gonna pick favorites on that.
No, you can't. You don't, you're not part of that. This is being done
So
by the
it
courts.
could be said that the fact that, the town's already come out and is
Feeling.
opposing this,
Oppose it.
is that we're already discouraging the installation. So it's a little redundant to put it as an
Well,
action item.
I just came from a meeting this afternoon with the attorneys that represent the citizens group opposing Hannaford's to talk about how long is this process going to take. It's now headed toward the Supreme Court, the Vermont Supreme Court. And the answer that came back from them was, it's probably going to take another 2 years. Again, that shouldn't change our decision,
then.
but that's what's going on out there.
But Maggie, I don't think, you say it shouldn't be an action item, but to discourage or not discourage, you think just because that we shouldn't discourage it any longer?
I just threw it out there.
Yeah.
If we're looking at any of the other action items as, since, clearly the town is already discouraging
Sure,
this.
sure.
So,
One other thing to note on these 6 action items, maybe 5, now that you've suggested a nice combination, which I think is a good suggestion. Remember the Route 116 scoping study? It said that the bulk of the improvement that we could see in queuing and congestion will happen if and when we complete the CVU Road intersection redesign, which is underway, and the Charlotte Road 116 improvement, that we know what needs to happen, but there's no money for it, no one's taking responsibility. Hannaford will do it, it's a part of their permit if they ever get, to the end of their process. So, given that those 2 improvements, according to that study, will drive the greatest increase in efficiency, why wouldn't we prioritize that Charlotte Road intersection improvement at the top, since...
But I think that it needs more data, and that more data, if you take here, the Stella Road and the Cheese Plant driveway into a public road, if that's going to have an effect on the traffic counts, if the number of people that are going to Charlotte, wouldn't you want to have that data before you made your final design for the intersection of Charlotte Road? If the traffic flows that are heading south if a percentage of them are going to take an alternate?
No, because part of the issue with that intersection is the desire to have
Right turn.
right turn on red out of Lampman's, which is irrespective of who might travel on Stella Road if that were made to be a public road, but also the syncing up of the phasing between the Lampman's exit and the Charlotte Road traffic, so that they get a green at the same time, and it makes more green time on 116 during that peak time. that, it doesn't matter how much traffic bleeds off onto Stella Road if that became a public road. That syncing up of the phasing, that moving of the Lampman's exit forward so people can go right on red, those would all be positive efficiency factors, regardless of what happened on Stella Road.
But the efficiency factor you still got if you continue the road through by the cheese plant. If you go through there and you're going to have, I don't know how many cars go through there on an hourly whatever, but that planning effect, wouldn't you want to have that information before you did a final design on it? I'm just curious.
No, because the final design has already been done for Charlotte Road, and it's simply syncing up that phasing and moving the Lampman's exit forward so that people can make that right on red.
Okay.
Nothing else is really proposed there. And as I said, that will happen if Hannaford ever gets in the ground. They're required to do it. But in the interim, we know what needs to be done, and neither the town nor the state is taking a leadership position to get it done. So that, I'm just thinking, hey, if we identified that as the highest priority, maybe the select board would actually pay attention.
So I'm just tossing other ideas out there. 7.2.1, work
Yeah.
with the state and CCRP to further evaluate and implement improvements
Seems to
in
cover
the
a whole
village
bunch of
area,
stuff.
as
Yeah.
discussed in the 116 corridor study. A benefit to that, I think, is that corridor study will not be left on the top shelf to gather dust, and I sometimes feel like it has been, and that, as far as I know, also includes it discusses the Mechanicsville Road intersection. No?
Well, it does
Well,
in the sense of adding a crosswalk
Not-
there
yeah, not
and
as a-
providing some traffic calming. It doesn't speak to the issue of improving the intersection for lights or any of that kind of stuff. But yeah, other things.
So it doesn't.
So Maggie, to put a finer point on it, you're saying if 721 was the priority action item from this area of the plan, it would be more comprehensive. It would cover all the things said above
Well,
and everything else in the
thought
corridor
it would,
plan.
I thought it did discuss the Mechanicsville Road and express an opinion about that.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
No, not whether or not there should be a traffic light there. But it does speak to all these other items, the one that I was just advocating for and Stella Road and such.
Could you make it continue to discourage the installation of a traffic light?
Yeah, I'm
that's
wide open.
what we're-
That's where 2 weeks ago I was more interested in a collaborative agreement of everybody, coming together and trying to pick what they thought. So
Doesn't the fact that the corridor study doesn't say discourage or encourage a light, it just talks about traffic calming, isn't that the guidance it gives? And by that I mean,
Yeah, and
you know what I mean? I'm
Hannaford
kinda
cited
looking
that
at
in their
there's-
court documents that neither the town nor the state is interested in a light, and the town's corridor study didn't even mention it, meaning it's not on anyone's radar screen.
So yeah, I guess I'm just trying to look
Only
at
the
it like,
judges.
I understand what you're saying about court cases and I think we should just ignore all that.
I agree.
And just
I don't wanna
say,
hear
this
anything
is what the
else.
town
Just
is
out there.
planning, and if that comes up, it comes up. But you know what I mean? We should, I like the
We should have a
idea,
position.
we've done this work, we've looked at what we should do with Route 116. They had that whole committee that went through it all.
Well, I think what I heard when what Maggie said is the nut of a decent idea, and just say, just kind of, maybe it takes a different recommendation, but just say, continue to encourage the implementation of the Route 116 scoping study, right, as documented, which, has, it has the CVU road, it has Shelburne Falls Road, it has Charlotte Road.
Is that just, sorry, go ahead.
Just leave it at that. So we want our scoping study turned into reality. Thank you.
But is that study the one that showed like the maps that showed the roundabouts and all that?
Yep.
Yep.
So
And
yeah,
talked
it
about
was like a
The
clear
potential for the town to take over a section
yeah,
of the road.
It was like a clear plan of.
Well, Joe, my
not
fear is
detailed,
that
but-
there's so much in that quarter study that if the priority action item is to implement it, it would be very easy to just ignore that action item because
Fair
there's
enough.
too
That's a
much
good
in
point.
it. We'll
That's a
never
good
do it
point.
all. It's
Fair
it's
enough.
like it's too frightening to even look at. Whereas if you pick one project from the study that was recommended, I think in the next 5-year period we could actually do it. Which I think is the point of identifying these top priority action items is to separate the wheat from the chaff and say over the next 5 years we're going to do everything in the plan, but we're going to make damn sure we do these 10 things. That's why being more specific might be good.
But it's a guiding document.
Everything is just that, yes.
Okay.
So with all that said, which one do you want to be your top priority action item for this general area
do we-
that was
do we-
identified as a top goal?
Do we do with
714 like Russell
714,
recommended, or
do we go
712
into-
like I advocated, or 721 that Maggie suggested?
I just think 7.1.2 would get the biggest bang for the buck. I mean, it would affect the most people, 'cause
I'd go with that.
People coming off Mechanicsville Road, yeah, there's, I don't know how many people, but there's a lot of
4
people coming
cars.
down 116.
Right,
Then it,
Going to Starksboro, going to Moncton,
Huntington
so I would
even.
go
yeah.
for that one. That would be my vote.
Other
I
opinions?
mean,
Seven-
we can even add,
seven
we
one
can
t-
even add to a
7.1.2.
while discouraging new traffic lights.
Yeah,
We need a traffic light every 15 feet at least.
I mean, you could just add that.
yeah,
And it was
so
712, the one. that you-
712,
and continuing
And-
to discourage the
and discourage.
installation of traffic light
Yeah,
at Mechanicsville. Put them both in one.
yeah,
Just traffic lights in general.
Because that,
Right.
I mean, it really would.
there
So
weren't
that-
any
so
in
what
town
is-
when I
you're already
started,
doing
it
one.
wasn't
So
that
we're
long
going to
ago.
merge 712 and 714, which is nice. You drop one action item, you merge them, and we're going to make it the top priority for the list. Got it.
I'm for that.
Everybody good with that?
Say it again.
So we're going to merge 712, which is kind of short, with 714. So it's going to talk
Oh,
about
okay, yeah.
prioritizing the design and installation of that 116 Charlotte Road intersection, and at the same time discouraging installation of additional traffic light at 116
Yeah.
Mechanicsville
Yeah.
Road.
And we're also
And
going to
continue to
combine,
discourage. Yeah.
we're going to combine what you said,
Seven-
what you recommended, 713 and 715.
Yes, per Russell's recommendation, we'll combine those
Right,
two as well.
combine those two.
But the top priority that'll go into that,
Becomes
front
the
end of the
seven.
plan will be
Yeah.
this combined 712 and 4.
Right.
Oh, heck,
Got it.
let's throw in a roundabout for Silver Street intersection, long as we're at it.
Yeah.
But that's going to require more space, and the little
We lose
wetlands
the rain
area,
garden.
the rain
Yes.
garden's going to
I was
get
trying-
modified.
Do you just have monkey wrenches in your back pocket
Yes.
that you like to fling right at the conclusion of a conversation?
Bring one in.
If they
I
can
should
do a
bring one in.
roundabout in Jeff, they can do it here. Okay, so,
Okay, I got it. I can do that.
So this
Okay.
actually becomes item 2, because we did item 1 last time.
all right,
If you
Sold.
say so, I still need to get that.
sold. It's after 9 now. Let's conquer at least one more, and we can do it. Dennis,
2.1.
you're next. 2.1.
Encourage
so-
affordable, reasonable priced housing.
When I think of affordable housing, I would like to include elderly and accessible housing within that, making it all one. That was my thought on it. Because we want affordable housing for everyone.
So
So-
2.2 and 2.1
Yeah.
merge.
So my suggestion was to put 2.1.2, that's there now, move that down to the village growth area. And 3.1.
Wait, which one are we moving down there?
212.
212
Okay.
to
3.1.
I was gonna consolidate that with 3.1.3.
3.1.3, continue partnering with nonprofit and for-profit
Developers
back
to create
affordable and
compact,
senior
affordable
housing.
including senior housing by
So-
allowing higher density.
In the village growth area.
Well,
I think
I
that
didn't
was,
need to-
I think
I
that was a
didn't
key
add
here.
that to it because it's in the village growth area section, but you could,
Oh, you just brought the 2.1 down into 3.
I mean, that's just my suggestion.
Yep.
That's a good one.
Oh, and my highest priority was 2.1.4. But I changed that a little bit. Facilitate public-private partnerships for the creation of affordable and reasonably priced housing, including senior housing, as well as the upgrading and rehabilitation of existing housing through state, federal grants, partnerships with nonprofit organizations or similar means.
So just put the including senior housing in to call it out,
Yep.
and that's you're advocating for that to be in the top 10 list of action items.
Yep.
214.
214 as
Okay.
amended.
And then change 2.1.2 in this section
And move it into.
to say, to support higher density housing that includes affordable, reasonably priced, and senior housing. I don't know if that's really. if you
So
kind
get
of
senior
rewording.
housing.
So we're,
Get
so we're
senior
moving,
housing
so
in.
we're moving the original 212 and we're replacing it with a new
With what I just
212?
said, yes.
Say it again.
What's the
Doesn't
difference
sound, doesn't
between-
sound efficient to me.
What's the difference between affordable and reasonably priced?
Depends how much money.
Or especially affordable.
It's actually a good question,
Another
Rolf.
twist.
And it cropped up in the last plan or a couple plan rewrites because affordable has a specific definition
Okay.
and
Reasonably priced is
and
subjective.
it's specific to people earning
Okay.
a certain
Certain
percentage of the
the
county
county,
median.
Yeah.
And reasonably priced was added to cover everybody else. You know,
Right.
the person who's earning 200% of county median, but still wants a house that's reasonably priced. But we don't define it. So we might want to somewhere because I don't think there
You
is
get
a
caught.
clear, I don't think it's clear.
Right. You
Yeah,
can,
you get caught if you don't
It can be
define it.
competitive in the market, but still unaffordable.
In 2.1.5, I thought we should get rid of consider. and just
I'm
say
no less
establish
affordable than
goals.
anybody else.
I think there's.
Just
I think
say
it kind of-
establish goals and
Establish
targets.
goals
I
and
think we
targets
kinda
for
do
affordable
about
and reasonably
Yeah.
priced
density
housing.
bonuses and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
consider, that's awfully wishy-washy.
All right.
So to Joe's point, yes, I did add one back, but I did consolidate one.
And can you just read the new 2.1.2 that would replace what was there now? What did you have it again? To support
Higher density housing that includes affordable, reasonably priced, and senior housing. I don't know if that's, maybe clean that up a little bit, make it sound
Just get rid of the
smoother, but-
especially and put in that includes.
2.1.2 as written to
But the only thing
3.
different about it is it's village growth area. I just think the village growth area should be in the village growth area, whatever they wanna do in the village growth area.
Gotcha.
I mean,
So
what-
essentially, the new 212
Just gets rid of.
just
the-
gets rid of
Becomes
village
3.
growth area
Yep.
and adds senior.
So do it all over the town, not just, don't focus it just in the growth, just everywhere.
Yes.
But I think there are strong arguments for keeping it in the greater village area. Right?
Yeah, that's where the infrastructure is.
Okay, utilities
There
are
is.
here.
Yeah,
Well-
actually, thank you.
Well,
like sewage treatment.
there's more of a chance of it than, out on.
Because 2.2, I remember, if we look back, I advocated getting rid of the village growth area and saying the town. I think we all agreed on it. Or
Right?
I'm pretty sure we got rid of
Got
your
rid
notes.
for which one again?
Providing affordable housing for elderly, not just in the village growth area.
In 221.
221.
212.
No, in 2.2, remember when we were redoing this?
Encourage
And your
housing for the
second-
elderly and
Okay.
disabled.
I wanted it not just in the village growth area.
Elderly and disabled housing, you wanted it town-wide.
Remember you talked about,
Yeah, but did we?
And that's what 2.2 says in my copy, encourage housing for the elderly
I
and
don't think you've
disabled.
gone to, you haven't.
Doesn't,
He's on
No, you haven't seen the draft
2.2.1.
two yet.
He hasn't
Right,
done
and
draft
that-
two yet.
that- he's
Right,
talking
and
about
that, he has to strike
I'm pretty
village
sure
growth
that's in
area.
draft two.
So that's fine.
in the village growth area
right.
dropping.
So, but back to Joe's question, or point. Right now, 212 says we want higher density housing in the village growth area of various sorts, affordable, reasonably, senior. Your proposal is to say higher density housing for all those good things everywhere. So
Anywhere, yeah.
what's the consensus? Is that what you want this to say, or do you
I
want
have
it,
to
do you
say
want it to
from
be
our
specific?
last meeting with,
The affordable.
with Frank and Al, just talking about, you know, the way our emergency services are going to grow. And a comment that Al made about, you know, when we have, senior housing, that's when
More calls.
we're absolutely gonna need our own ambulance service. And, you know, that's part of infrastructure and part of the benefit of having senior housing in the village growth area, I think. Also in terms of just having, you know, services, walkable, you know, the whole sidewalk system. I think there's a lot of sense in
Right, but
keeping
our
it
whole-
where
our
the
whole-
services are.
Town is growing old. I mean, our whole country's growing old. So, I mean, the ambulances will be going all over Hinesburg. At least they'll be consolidated.
I'm just getting a nurse.
What's interesting is
And have a hospital built next to your house, right?
we're talking about, you know, like in 2.1.6, they're talking that it can be as small as one Habitat for Humanity home. It still serves the function.
Yeah,
And
there's
that one home wouldn't necessarily have to be in the village district.
there's nothing that limits going out into the rural area and doing what you
It's the
said.
density, I think.
Yeah,
That's my
the
concern,
part that
going
catches
outside
me
the-
is not that you want to put affordable, reasonably priced, or senior potentially sprinkled around the entire town. It's the encouraging the higher density of that outside of the village area, which sort of would run counter to the previous sort of smart growth vision of like high density development of any sort, market rate, affordable, senior,
I think it's a
is
great
supposed to
point.
cohere,
In the village area.
and we do lower density of whatever type outside of the village
I
area.
think that's a great point.
If I was a senior or disabled, I wouldn't want to be living where I am now. I'd want to be in the high-density village area.
Right, so you
Close
could
by.
have access to
Yeah.
stuff. So what if you could remove the word higher density housing from 212 and simply say support affordable, reasonably priced and senior housing?
In the village growth area.
No, I was gonna say
Or
just,
anywhere.
just
Let
in
it
general.
be anywhere.
Just not higher density
Yeah,
outside the
not-
village.
Right,
growth area.
and move the
But I-
higher
but I
density
think
one
we-
to section 3.1.3 like you suggested, because that's the village section of the plan.
But I
Fine
think we
with that.
do support, affordable, reasonably priced senior housing town-wide with, accessory apartments and, I mean, I don't think we discourage it.
But just taking out the higher density point allows it to be encouraged anywhere in town.
Well, higher density and village growth area should certainly
Stay
go together, but, so we're just saying we support we support affordable and reasonably priced housing, is that effective?
Well, that's what
I-
goal 2.1 itself says.
I mean, I would be all for just taking out the higher density portion, but you still want to support it. I mean,
I just think that affordable housing kind of goes hand in hand with higher density, right? I mean, you know, cost to build, cost of infrastructure versus unit, all those things. I think you should be encouraging, you know, more affordable housing and you know, more dense housing where it is most reasonable to develop it. And, you know, to Alex's point, right, fits along with, you know, zoning that we've already put in place, you know, for other town priorities that are also in the town plan. You know, the preservation of rural landscape, the preservation of working lands, all those things that, you know, if you start making exceptions for affordable housing or high density housing in those areas, right, you kind of defeat, right,
What do you call our trailer parks?
those goals. Well, I call our trailer parks, you know, items that were there before a lot of zoning, right? You know, would you allow a trailer park the way a trailer park has been put down before, right, to happen fresh today?
I'd rather have it there than right here in the village growth area. Wouldn't
All
you?
right, point taken.
You gotta
But-
have it though. And not everybody, I know it's supposedly cheaper to live in the village growth area, but a lot of people move to Hinesburg, they don't wanna live where you're looking out. So you're saying they
I
shouldn't be
mean,
able to build an
well,
affordable
I
house?
mean, what's the difference between looking out of a trailer park window and looking out of a 3-story window?
Well, I mean,
You're
there's
still
other affordable
tight,
housing besides
right?
trailers.
You know, whereas, you know, whereas the higher density building in the village area better not have, right, the septic and water issues that we've had to encounter in try and fix, right, in our trailer park, you know, developments. I mean, then you add things like, you know, public transportation, right? Proximity of services, you know, medical, groceries, you know, yada yada yada. And it seems that, you know, if you're going to encourage, you know, especially elderly housing, right? I got to agree with Maggie. You want to do that in a higher density setting where you have proximity. You know, sooner or later, the elderly, facing this with my mother-in-law, right? She's not going to be able to drive anymore. They're not going to be able to drive anymore, right? So, right, to encourage, you know, development in a place where it's even harder to get around, it doesn't seem logical to me.
I mean, I don't think even like Wake Robin in those areas, those aren't that close to grocery stores or.
Well, I mean, do we want to Wake Robin in, you know, in a rural area? Is that the way we want Hinesburg to go?
Well, Wake Robin is not far off Route 7.
I'm just curious. Wake Robin's not a bad thing.
I don't think so.
Wake. I mean, just
But
the description of Wake
so
Robin
let
itself.
me rephrase the question. Would we like a Wake Robin way out on Baldwin Road, or, you know, up on Texas Hill?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm
I mean, is that the
reading
right place for it?
I think affordable housing can include lots of different things. I don't think the definition has to be defined down to project housing as we think about it. I think it has a lot of different possibilities.
I agree it does, right? But I would think that, you know, proximity to transportation, proximity to services, right, is a key element in especially elderly housing.
What if we rework 212 to say something a little more inclusive, like support affordable, reasonably priced, and senior housing town-wide with an emphasis on the village growth area?
Higher densities in the village growth area.
I'd be
Or yeah, with an emphasis on higher densities of this housing in the village growth area. That way, we're on record as saying we support it townwide, but we acknowledge that the higher density versions of it are gonna gain more support if they're in the village area. With that,
I kind of like the
Solve it.
idea. Where I'm having trouble is with, okay, let's say we act on this thing. Let's say it's our number one, we act on it. Okay, we go to write the zoning bylaw, right? That buttresses this, and we're writing it for ag, or we're writing it for, RR1, right? What's it say? Given that we just went through in the last couple of years, number of lots, minimum lot coverage.
But wait, Joe, I don't think these are regulatory action items. Supporting that housing doesn't mean you change your regulations. If your regulations already allow it, it means that you maybe cheerlead at a development review meeting and actually the high priority item that Dennis advocated for is 214, the facilitating these public-private partnerships for the creation of this kind of housing. Again, that's not a regulatory action item. That's let's go get a grant. Let's work collaboratively with Housing Vermont. Let's, those sorts of things. I don't know that we would need to monkey with densities or lot sizes or any of that.
I mean, I read a different meaning into support. I mean,
I don't know, I just, if given the potential of the village growth area with some limited utilities, if the sun doesn't shine a little brighter, we may not be encouraging any affordable or reasonably priced housing if we define it only for the village district. I mean, there may not be any. And I think being moderate.
And you'd like to have some.
Being moderate and saying, yes, let's focus the density on, if everything's here.
Are people, I'm going back to what Dennis was saying, which put 2.12 in another goal section. Are we doing that?
3.1?
Or not?
in 3.
Or is that under conversation here? Because I heard Dennis say 2.1.4 was the primary goal, and that you wanted to move
it to chapter
2.1.2 to section 3.
But then
Yeah,
rewrite
But then redo
2.1.2
2.1.2.
to say the same, just without the village.
The
steering.
sticky
And
part
that's
came
seen
with the last suggestion that the new 212 supports affordable, reasonably priced, and senior townwide.
Okay.
I'm willing to compromise with your last wording of it.
It's a lot of coverage.
You said who were you?
You.
Mine. So my suggestion was support affordable, reasonably priced, and senior housing townwide with an emphasis on higher density, of such housing in the village growth area.
Yeah.
Well, we'd have to stick with the zoning regs, right? So what's the lot coverage outside the village growth area?
No, we don't. I mean, this board is in charge of writing the zoning regs.
Those,
Right.
But currently, the
What is it
the
currently?
rural
One
zoning.
house an acre, let's say, for example?
So, I mean, if you wanted to, take this to its limit and support it by changing your zoning regs, that's within this board's, purview.
No, but what I'm saying is, I don't know off the top of my head, I don't know what the lot size coverage is out in the rural area, but let's say it's a one house an
Well, it
acre.
varies.
It might be bigger, but whatever, right? So if somebody comes in and buys 100 acres, puts 100 houses on there, and makes it all affordable senior care, like it's gonna be an expensive wake robin, but you know what I mean?
But
What do I care?
Currently, we have regulations, not
3
that we
acres on
can't
the
change
right-hand
them,
side.
that
Well,
how
that all
many
changed. It's
units
rural
per
zoning.
acre,
Well,
depending
some
on
of
what
it.
kind of road
Some
it's
of it
on.
has.
My focus is on
We
the
had
density.
some
Change
limits.
That's how RR1, RR2 and ag work today.
Work now, not that we can't change it, but right now, there's a limit essentially in terms of how many, you couldn't put wake robin on any of our lots unless you had a really big piece of land.
That's right.
Yeah, Joe's point is you could rewrite the regs based
You
on
can
this
re-
if this were
right, you
taken to
can.
be licensed
But you
to
could
do
leave-
so. maybe you could,
But you could leave this and rewritten, as you've suggested, and leave the zoning regulations in terms of how many units, depending on what kind of road you're on, you could leave those, and that would be a limit.
Well, I mean, what you're saying, John, is, do Alex's thing, but kind of ignore changing the zoning bylaws to, support it in that way.
That particular,
Okay, I mean, that's an option, but if that was your number one, to support this, then, aside from buying pom-poms and going to meetings, you can tell I'm tired and cranky, right?
No.
Well, so what I was gonna recommend,
I
Joe,
don't
is.
think we should buy pom-poms.
What I was going to recommend, Joe, is perhaps would it make you more comfortable if the statement was support affordable, reasonably priced and senior housing town-wide within existing density parameters, with an emphasis of higher density of such housing in the village growth area? I mean, would that rate it in a little bit?
2.1.
Yeah, that-
But you're still.
Tell me I don't have to do
number one was
anything.
2.1.4.
You don't have to do anything.
Sounds like a great one to pick for the top
He
10.
gave thumbs up.
Done.
Like this.
Okay,
I saw
but
it.
remember, Dennis didn't propose this as the top priority.
Right.
No,
This is
that's
not
what
the
I'm
top
kind of laughing
Well,
at.
right.
He's still gonna
Just
go to
within that
2.1.4
category.
because
Focus
what we're
people.
arguing about isn't the priority.
But
Right.
I love the argument, so I'm sticking with
I
it.
want your pom-poms. I want them.
So
No, I
for
don't
our,
want pom-poms.
for our-
I don't
What
want
color?
pom-poms.
I don't
What color are they
want
gonna
the
be?
last one.
Then we'll have to decide what color
I want to stick
pom-poms.
with the one you had before.
Red and white.
Red and white.
Without that cateat about the existing densities?
Yep.
Okay, so
What
we're
are
still
the
in the middle of
AARP
argument.
Yeah, that'll be an argument.
Stick with all.
There are no AA parking.
Because I'm big on our whole goal of keeping densities contained and not sprawling out into the rural area. I
Yeah,
think
let's
that's
do this.
Which is what the rural
a
zoning
main
does
goal of the
now.
overall
Yeah, this is the
plan.
good Joe Punchy, right? During working hours, it's the evil Joe Punchy.
Should we look at 2.1.4?
Is 2.14 still your number one?
Right,
I'm looking.
That's been the whole time.
right. Including senior housing into it.
Yeah. Is everybody good with 214 as
Yes.
the top priority for this high priority goal of the plan? It's an interesting one. It is absolutely not a regulatory one, isn't it? Joe, you can counter me, but it sounds like 214 is not about regulations.
No, we're
No,
passing the buck on
Two,
this
two,
one.
two, 214 is going out and shaking hands and,
Yeah.
and whispering in people's ear.
Pom-poms.
And regardless of your
Then they're going to look at your zoning regs and hold their hands up. But
But that's a huge thing. That Green Street project would not have happened had it not been for the public-private partnership that the town entered into to bring over $500,000 to make that project possible. And I've worked here for 14 years. We haven't created 23 units of affordable housing in 14 years until that project came along. So I think this is huge. I'm glad you identified it as a top priority.
And what the heck? Let's throw in Silver
Now,
Street
what about-
roundabout too.
What about your point, Alex, that reasonably,
Go home.
reasonably
high-rise
priced housing is not
I'd
like
like to define it. I think in the next
shouldn't
draft
we
we can see a
include-
definition, yeah.
We need to have a
if you
definition
get more
of what
units, it'll
reasonably
come out
priced
above. That way we don't have to
is
plow the
different than
roundabout.
And a moat.
affordable.
Yeah.
Great.
We could have a stormwater sprinkler.
We need to call this meeting right now.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay, so that means everybody was good with 214 with the addition of senior housing into it as a top priority. Hooray! And you're still in disagreement about the reworded 212.
But we can procrastinate on that one.
Well, I'll just draft something and Joe and Jeff and Dennis
Can
make a
duke it
mental
out.
Kick
note.
that can
when
down the
you-
road,
When you
people.
see draft 2, remember to look at 2.1.2 to see how it turned out.
2.1.2.
You have to bring a gavel to that.
Can't
wanna bring
remember. I can't
popcorn.
remember what I had for lunch today. No.
Okay. Thank you, Dennis.
All right. It is 9:30. What would the board like to do at this point?
The next one is control impacts from stormwater runoff. Right, that got 29 votes.
Is our next meeting going to have visitors, guests, or anything controversial?
We just have our own
No,
meeting.
it's just, there's nothing on the agenda. My hope was to have the second draft of the plan to you for that meeting. That's unlikely to happen, and you're still kicking this stuff around with great enthusiasm.
Yes.
Um,
So I'm wondering if we would come at this with even greater enthusiasm.
If you were unencumbered by other agenda items.
Why, yes.
Yeah.
I
mean,
can pledge not to schedule anything else.
Okay.
that half hour turned into over an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a good discussion, but
Right.
So if we come in our next meeting and focus on this and try not to go off on too many tangents, then maybe we could plow through and
get further along.
get through.
Okay, so you would like to move off of this item and close the meeting and take it up again at the next one? Is that
I
the?
think we should hit minutes.
All right.
And also not schedule anything
Right.
else for the next meeting.
Scout's honor, I won't.
Okay.
So let's go on the minutes of the 27th of July.
I had something, just waiting for them to read.
What's that? Yeah, I go.
Where did the minutes go?
All right.
Could you scoot down
Where to, Maggie?
a little further down?
On this page?
No,
Not on page 1?
not on page 1,
Page 2?
apparently. Okay, hold on. So, first paragraph, oh, there it is. Maggie G pointed out the need to proceed with caution when consolidating items, as each section has the potential to be severable.
What's
I'm
that
trying to
mean?
remember what I,
Cut it off.
Where,
I'm trying
where
to
are
think
you
of a
pointing?
good,
The highlighted
so,
one? Okay.
yeah. Each
Oh, yeah.
section has the potential to be,
Yeah, so my take on what you were saying was that as we're consolidating things, like the plan by end users could be taken, okay, I'm gonna take this section, and now I'm charged with using just this section to run with it and do what I wanna do. And so like in contract language, a lot of times you sign something like each article in this contract is
Right.
severable and
Yeah.
it stands alone.
I don't think that's what you meant, though. I think
well,
what.
but Dawn is right, because such as grant writing, that it's important to have sections,
Bullet
as
items.
individual. Yeah, be able to stand on their own.
Consolidate.
Yeah.
But I think, wouldn't it make more sense to use the word useful? Because each section has the potential to be useful by end users, such as grant writing personnel. Wouldn't that be more intuitive as to what, isn't that what you meant? Like, we don't want to consolidate too much because then we lose the ability to quote from the plan and support our grant writing, or am I making?
Or interpret each action when it's with its potential.
I thought it was to get the grant, you kind of had to have the bullet specifying that you
sort
are
of
focused on.
has it, right,
Yeah.
has it defined.
Right, which in consolidation can sometimes
How
eliminate
about
that.
combine those two? Like, it has the potential to be useful on its own, or does that?
What I was getting from what you were saying was that they need to stand alone. So if we take, at the time we were talking about section 1.4 and section 7.3
Right.
have the same meaning. So let's
Mhm.
put them together. And then if someone's using section 1, they're missing. what
So maybe if it just
That's
said,
exactly
as
it,
each
yeah,
section
yeah.
has the potential to be useful,
By end users.
by end users, blah, 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 if they, if
Such as
such
grant
sections
writing.
stand alone, or if something like that. Severable didn't mean anything to me either when I read it. I don't, that's not a usage of that term that I get.
Yeah, but it's the right. But that's exactly the
But that's the
idea.
intent.
So and I can't remember what exactly, but I remember we were having this conversation about it, so.
So
What-
can
what if
you,
we
can
said
you
rather than
reword it,
using
Don,
the-
and just make it so?
Yeah, I mean, rather than using potential, we could say, as each section is intended to stand alone, to be used by end users. And remove, or.
Yeah,
I can
maybe
work on
the
something.
potential to be useful. I think that's, I mean, it's simple, it's,
I like the intended to stand alone, because that actually says a section can be looked at
No.
just by itself.
It's your section of the minutes. This is you speaking 2 weeks ago.
I
So
can't
you
remember
tell
what
us-
I said
Tell
5 minutes
us
after
what you
I
wanted
said
to
it,
say
so
now.
I'm gonna throw it in Don's hands and she'll
All I heard was Silver Street roundabout.
wrench.
Which skyscraper?
And moat.
In the center.
I really
And
like
a
that
fountain.
inseparable.
Yeah.
Stormwater's real well.
Okay, other comments?
Well, it doesn't say there I was supposed to send an email, John. Sorry.
No, it doesn't. You're right.
Send an email for next time.
I will.
And the
Let us
comments,
know what color pom-poms.
Okay.
as I understood, Joe, in the three things that are listed here that you asked us to do, that we were to look at other sections beyond what we were assigned to see if we could find overlapping items, things that could be combined.
I did say that, and that is
Okay.
in the minutes.
Okay, and that's there.
Right.
So that's part of our assignment, which,
Which I didn't do, but
right, okay.
I'll do it for next time.
I did. I looked at those 29 pages and said, Jesus.
You're awesome, though. Would you like to be chair?
No, not at all. You do such a superb job. Your vocabulary is explicit,
One
lively,
thing
and
along those lines of looking at other items, I found a lot of things that had, I'm talking about the action items, had very big actions, and other things that had very pointed, specific actions, and I found that, you know, it's a real mixture. It reminded me of those, the farmer who collects all the nuts and bolts and washers and everything and throws them in a can and then looks for them when he needs a certain one. I'm just wondering if we can, you know, find a way to have sort of the same level of actions. I don't know whether that's possible, because some of them were very broad and some of them were very specific. And I think that, to me, that added a lot of confusion as to how to then build our zoning ordinances and our subdivision ordinances around those. So maybe
Well-
that's something we think about when we're doing that item 3 that Joe asked us to do. When we're looking at other sections and.
But didn't we have other groups make these action items?
Yes, but you're.
We
They don't wanna
did,
take it all
right.
away
But
from
you're the
us.
planning
No,
commission.
That's why we
no,
have to
But you,
do it.
no,
I mean,
but
in the end, you're the planning commission.
Can we
It's
find
your
ways to
plan.
get them sort of at the same level of
I just don't think
specificity?
you'll ever get them the same. I mean, different groups did them, so. I mean,
Right.
Or not,
you can
or
wait
not.
on this thing for the next
what I-
3 years.
What I'm trying to express
Time
is,
to do it again.
don't feel that because another group happened to write that recommendation has to stay as it is. We ask for input from other boards and commissions.
But
We value that, but it, you know, in the end, this board owns the plan.
it's our job.
Well, I think we have. I mean, I had a bunch that I rewrote.
Right.
I think everybody.
Good, well,
is,
that's,
so
that, right.
I think everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Okay, so let's get back to the minutes.
I make a motion to approve as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
All in favor?
Oh, whoops, that's not me.
No, Dennis would like to be chair.
Sorry.
Imagine the power that he would wield. DRB, planning commission.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, minutes are passed. Alex, any other business?
Only the update that the select board did set a hearing date for the solar screening regs for September 12th. If you're interested in putting that on your calendar, if you'd like to come. And then just that they made a couple of very minor revisions, not really substantive, I didn't think. Maggie was there, she could correct me if she thought they were. Barbara, were you there too?
Yeah.
I think I missed you.
Just, I don't remember what they said.
In any case, the hearing's on, and that's a good thing.
Okay, thank you. All right, motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Cut it out.